I think more people should believe in Bigfoot. Not that I advocate the existence of such a creature, but it would be kind of cool to know that there's 3,000-4,000 highly intelligent bipedal primates wandering around the woods in North America, and what if you went in there one day and met one, and it turned out to be friendly, and you're like, hey, Bigsy, let's have a beer, you're sitting back in the woods drinking a pint with Sasquatch, right? And just always thought that would be pretty cool. And just so happens that that's the kind of magical bullshit thinking it takes to actually make a living in the music business. Matter of fact, there's a bigger chance that there actually is a Bigfoot than most people have of ever making it, or even making money or anything in this business. Yeah. Sometimes I want to tell people, that ask me, how do I get into this business? I just want to tell them, I think you should go camping. So I had put out the second record, well, actually the third one, really, with Borealis. So I had 3 records with them at this point. Return to the Cape, Another Morning, which of course I've already spoken about, and another fiddle album called Heart and Soul, which I put out next because, well, at the time I was still really well known as a fiddler, and which annoyed me to no end. I would literally get places sometimes and people would say, I didn't even know you played the guitar. Here was another one. I would get to gigs and I had this bizarre crossover period which lasted for years, where I would go to gigs and the buyers or the audience or whatever, usually the buyers, would be like, I thought you were a fiddler. We don't want this, guitar and singing. Or we thought you were a singer. The show is too fiddle heavy or whatever. Like, I couldn't fucking satisfy anybody for this period of time where I would run into this contention quite a bit, where the contents of my show posed a problem for buyers who were pissed off that they thought I was one thing and I showed up and did something else. And the truth of the matter was I was still trying to do both things every show. But obviously there was just no money in playing the fiddle. So the fiddle started to get phased out. And even to this day, over 25 years later, I still go places and people are like, where's your fiddle? Because I don't carry one at all anymore on the road. And I'm like, I don't play the fiddle anymore. And they're like, what? And they lose their fucking mind, right? But I knew at that point that there was just no money in being a fiddler. I watched my heroes, people like Jerry Holland and Howie McDonald and Carl McKenzie and Arthur Muse and Dwayne Cote and like all these unbelievably good fiddlers starve to death. They're in financial ruin most of the time, And there was really only two fiddlers that were making a living, and it was Natalie McMaster and Ashley McIsaac, and that was because they had somehow miraculously got signed to major labels, were part of the commercial mainstream, had sold gold and platinum records, and they were one in a billion, these two people who actually made fiddle music pay off. So I put heart and soul out because, first of all, I was so worried about what was going to happen to these records, and I knew I was going to have to put another one out after this to complete my part of the obligation in the contract with Borealis, and I just didn't trust them. I didn't trust them to do what needed to be done if I was going to try to do a really serious follow-up to Another Morning. If I was going to bring my A game, I wanted to make sure that these guys were going to do something about it, right? I didn't want a repeat of everything I had just experienced with Another Morning. I didn't want distribution problems. I didn't want, to miss out on charting because the label wasn't putting it where it was supposed to be. I didn't want, all this ambiguity about where's the money for this, all of this? Where is this being sold? What's being done? I just didn't want any of that. So I remember things were starting to fall apart a bit. I had left Rave, and now mind you, there's a lot of things going on at that time as well, around 1999. There was a meeting. I got to talk about this because it's very important. And there was a meeting one time. Now, Max was instrumental in getting me early in my career into Scotland and also into Denmark at the Tuner Festival, the Tonder Festival. And the guy, the AD, the artistic director of the Tonder Festival, Tuner, his name was Karsden Panduro, and this guy was the coolest, badass guy you ever met. He was just amazing. Him and his wife, Annie, and he became a very close friend of mine. He was very much like Max. He knew I was full of shit sometimes, and he just called it, right? And I just loved him. He was no bullshit, matter of fact kind of guy. And I got to tell this story too. I'm going down a few rabbit holes, but these are important, right? The first time I ever went to Tuner, I got very sick on the way over. I caught a terrible chest cold. And as soon as I landed, I was like, I'm going to have to go to a doctor. I've got to get some kind of medication because I am so sick. I had a bad flu. Fever and coughing, and my lungs were full of congestion, and I was ruined. And so they found me some drugs and stuff, and they put me in the hotel, which was called the Motel. And it was this beautiful, 2-floor, old-style motel, and except it was beautiful inside. It was just gorgeous. And so I was just, starting to experiencing Denmark for the very first time. And just what little I had seen that thus far, there kind of blew me away. These people had it so together. You could walk along the street in this town during the festival and just drink a beer in a glass from a tavern. You could just walk up and down the street and do whatever you want, and when you're done with your glass, you pass it in the window of another bar. And they had like community glass racks on wheels that went back and forth across this long thoroughfare where all of the bars shared these glasses, and you could just walk along and order a beer through the window and just walk down the street drinking your beer and no problem. And it was an amazing place. It was just like, this is incredible. And there was no, there were police, but they didn't wear badges or guns or weapons of any kind. They were dressed in black trousers and white blazers with a little smart little cap on. And they didn't carry weapons at all. And they weren't like a presence in the place. They just kind of were there like as a friendly support, to anybody who might need it. There was we didn't witness any crime or any, you felt completely safe in this place. It was the wildest thing I ever saw. And I was told by people, this is a socialist country. When you come out of school, your education is free, and you choose a vocation or a career, and that's the type of house that you get, and this is the way everybody gets the same wage, and it was incredible. I was being told all these things, and just boggled my mind, But the most amazing thing I ever saw, and as soon as I saw this, I thought, boy, has North America ever got a lot of growing up to do. I looked out the window of my motel one night, way late at night, about 3 o'clock in the morning, and there was a guy across the street on the sidewalk, passed out drunk, sleeping. And he was laying in the sidewalk, just laying there. And as I was watching, one of the little police cars came up, and the 2 police officers got out of the car, looked at the guy, and they shoved him over against the building, right, out of the way of the middle of the sidewalk. And one of them went to the trunk and got a big blanket and put it over the guy and tucked him all in. And they left him there. And I thought, holy crap. This is in August. It was beautiful weather. I thought, I can't believe I just saw that. But that's what they did. They didn't arrest him. They didn't wake him up. They made sure he was okay. They put a blanket over him. They tucked it all under his head and everything. They tucked him in there nice and warm. And in the morning, I happened to get up early for breakfast, and I looked out the window, and I watched this guy wake up. And when he woke up, he sat up, looked around, looked at the blanket, stood up, kind of groggy, and he took the blanket and folded it very, very neatly into a small square, and he put it on the windowsill above where he had been laying. And not 10 minutes later, the cops came by, took the blanket, put it in the trunk, and drove off. I thought, holy shit. How much money and trouble was saved by those 3 people deciding to do what they did. The guy got drunk and fell asleep. Okay, we'll take care of him. He got up and went, wow, look at this nice blanket. He didn't act like a dick and throw it in the gutter. He folded it up and put it there so somebody could come and get it. And then the police came and got it and walked. That cost nobody anything. He wasn't fined. The police didn't have to write a report. Nobody was injured. There was nobody with a criminal record. It was really quite astounding to watch it go down. And I started to realize then, that was the beginning of my education about Europe, where I just thought, man, we are so far behind these people, it's just not even funny. And so Carsden Panduro came to Cape Breton quite a bit, and I remember one time him coming quite early on in the early mid-90s, came to my house with Max McDonald, and Max wanted me there at the meeting for some reason, and they sat at my kitchen table, and Max looked at Carsden and said, we'd like to start a festival. And Carsden said, lovely, and I'll help you any way I can. And Max said, well, We intend to start a multi-venue festival on Cape Breton Island that has, you know, dozens of shows that last 9 days, and there'll be 10, 12, 15 venues running simultaneously all 9 days, and so that people get to come to Cape Breton and see the whole island, and they choose the shows they want to go to. It'll be held in October, so we're going to call it Celtic Colors. And we really think this is a great idea. We got some funding and backing and whatnot. And Carsden looked at Max and went, "So when do you want to do this?" And this was in February. Max looked at Carsden and said, "We're going to do it this October." Carsden said, "You're crazy. You'll never do it. I don't think it's possible to get it done that soon." But he lent a ton of his advice and support, moral and technical, and Max and Joella pulled it off. They had the very first Celtic Colors Festival that year, and I played it, and I've played the festival every single year that it has happened. And it has become one of my best paydays of any gig that I do. And I've continued to program the Guitar Summit that occurs on the Thursday night of the festival every year since its inception. And I guess I'm telling this story, because even though the management booking thing fell apart with me and Rave Entertainment, it never affected the rest of our relationship. And I can honestly say that all of my failed attempts at having a manager were my fault. I failed, but I failed for reasons, and I'm going to get into those, right? But it was me that caused the breakups. I can guarantee you that, because of a few tenets that I hold above everything else, really. And so it was along about this time, around 1998, 99, around 1999, I guess, that I went to Dave. We were talking about things, and I said, it's time I made another original album. And I said, I have the material. I got enough material for a 14-cut record. It'd be just incredible. I think I've got it. I've got what I need. And so Dave had a studio set up in his little house at the top of the hill in Pictou Town. And he was still single. I think he was just starting to date his future wife. And anyhow, he said, I said, "Would you help me cut it?" And he said, "Yeah, why don't you come and do it at my place?" And because even in those days, the technology wasn't there because we just didn't have it. It wasn't around. But Dave was such an incredible engineer. He basically had an ADAT studio, which was tape, but VHS tape. So he had 24 tracks of ADAT tape and some really nice outboard gear and all these different things, right? And he was becoming an incredible producer and engineer, and this is where he would cut some of his own records that, to me, are some of the best he ever did. But I just loved Dave, and I thought this is the best place I could do this. So we sort of copied the Another Morning idea. I wanted to have a drummer and a bass player to act as a core for the album. And so I hired two guys that I felt were just at the top of their game. The first fellow was was a guy named Dave Burton. Dave Burton is, I believe, Humber College educated uh, jazz drummer, pop drummer, rock, country, you name it. This guy is a tremendous musician. Not only that, but a brilliant pianist as well. And I believe he'd worked for, he was playing for Rita McNeil, I think, that when I auditioned for her when I was a kid. That's the first time I ever met him. And so, and we all loved him. He was he was a crazy bastard like us, and loved to laugh, and we just never stopped laughing all the time that we were together, you know. And then I hired a bass player, and the best bass player that I could find that I have ever really seen live play a bass ever in my life really was a guy named Jamie Gaddy. And Jamie, of course, has been playing with the Bear McNeils now for, I don't know, over 20 years. And that's been his steady gig, and he is a god of electric and upright bass. There's just nobody better. And also really funny, really kind of a quiet guy. But like this chemistry between me and Dave and Burton and Jamie Gaddy, boy, it making this record was incredible. And it took quite a while. There was a lot on this album. Looking back at the record now, some people, including myself, some people say that it's overproduced, that there was too much on it. There was too much wall of sound, kind of, you know, I don't know. I actually love the record. When I hear it, it's sort of me at the top of my own production game, you know. It's very well put together. It was co-produced by Gunning and Dave Burton, I didn't try to keep it to myself. I didn't try to keep the production chops and job to myself. I took these guys' advice, which led to a lot of really cool things that happened on this record. There was a ton of cool stuff on this record. Everything from there was 5 or 6 piece small ensemble from the Symphony of Nova Scotia, which I had already started working with and doing live show. I had done several live shows with them by now, and there was, of course, drums, bass, guitars, piano provided by Burton and Hilda on certain things. Me and Gunning and Burton provided all the background harmonies. We had guests like Modabo, the great trio from New Brunswick. The piper Kieran O'Hare was probably one of the best Uilleann pipers on the planet. And some friends of mine from Eskasoni, Alex and Richard Poulette, who were also a band called Morning Star. And they were immense singer-songwriters in English and in Mi'kmaq. And I'm probably forgetting people right now, but suffice it to say that it was a massive, massive production. And Dave didn't charge me a goddamn dime for this. And I think I might have paid that man $1,000 for everything that was done. And it took months to complete because we were touring. I think Dave was still playing with me at this time, or just finishing. And it was a massive undertaking, massive. I remember still also dealing with my general anxiety disorder during this recording of this record. Had more than a few serious panic attacks, which were, cropping up now and then. But I was put into that position by what I knew I was facing. This was a seriously precarious situation I was in, and as the record started to take shape, I could see that it was going to be a really good album. It ended up being titled for a song that I wrote just as they closed the last of the mines in Cape Breton, put the final 3,000 families out of work, and I wrote a song called Now That the Work Is Done. And it seemed to be, to me, like almost a prophetic title for the album too, right? So much work had been done in my life to that point to get where I could make a record like that, where I sort of had control of production and control of, well, so I thought, control of everything about it. It was along about this time that I saw the writing on the wall concerning the quality of the album. And I started to get really concerned about what Borealis intended to do with this record. And so I called Grit. I think it was either Grit or, I think it was Grit. I don't think it was Bill. I called Grit, talked to Grit. Grit Laskin, he was always willing to talk to me. The man never turned me away, ever. And I just basically told him, I said, I hope you're ready for this. I don't want you to, I need to know, I need to hear it from you that you're ready for this next record. That we're not going to have a repeat of what happened with Another Morning. And I need you to get behind me 100%. If there's something else you're doing, you need to drop it until this is done. Because this will benefit everyone. If you do everything you possibly can to market this thing and do it correctly, and distribute it and do that correctly, and we will have a gold record in our hands. But if you're not going to do that, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I can make as good a record as anybody, but if nobody knows about it, what is the point? At the end of that phone call, Grit just wouldn't commit. He obviously didn't say no or go fuck yourself. That wasn't what he was saying. He just wouldn't sew himself into the corner of guaranteeing that they were going to fulfill their end of the contract, which provided that they were supposed to do everything in their power to promote, market, and sell these records. And he just wouldn't do it. He wouldn't say yes. He wouldn't reassure me. But he didn't. At the same time, he didn't do the opposite of that either. He remained this strange, neutral place, which made no sense to me. Because we had a written contract, and it was like, okay, so I'm only asking him to do what is already signed. We have a contract. This is what he's supposed to do. If I can't get him excited enough to verbalize and vocalize the contents of the contract with me in a happy way, what am I doing here? Why the fuck am I even in this? It was along about this time that I had moved on to another manager, a gentleman by the name of Mickey Quays. Mickey Quays, many of the people that I get involved with, strangely enough, were kind of through Hilda. Hilda knew these people because she knew the musicians that they handled. And she was always a major fan of Andre Bourgeois, who managed Natalie. And she was a fan of Mickey Quays because Mickey had such a connection to the Rankin family. Mickey Quays navigated the Rankin family's career for the bulk of their career, of their commercial career, and did it exceptionally well. evidenced by the level of success they achieved. They sold, 7 million records inside Canada, and had won every goddamn award that there was. And Mickey was there for all of that, and he was a good man. And he and I hit it off, and we were working on this record together. We did a unique cover for the album. I wanted to do a photo of me just walking away and chucking a guitar, right? The work is done. Boom. And a lot of people have asked me about the cover of that album, how it was done, if I really threw that beautiful Maple Morgan guitar, but I didn't. It was photoshopped. What I was actually throwing was the guitar itself was in a chair in the frame, and I took a step forward and threw a sneaker out of the frame so it would look realistic that I was actually throwing something. And then they, of course, photoshopped the chair out so the guitar was in midair. They put some blur on it, and that's how the shot was taken, for those who are curious about the cover of that album. And we were just sort of at our creative best, Mickey and I had some good hopes for this. He put me with one of the country's biggest booking agencies, Pecan. Now that company had started out basically working with Fred Penner. And they had grown into this massive roster of incredible Canadian talent. And I did exceptionally well with them. They were a great company to be with. I looked at Mickey one day and said, I don't think that this is going to work with Borealis. I think we're in trouble. And I said, I don't want to waste this record. There's songs on this record that are commercially viable, or so I thought at the time. And I was probably right. There was definitely a few songs in that would have went over on country radio or adult contemporary or whatever. And I said, I can't waste this record, man. I put too many hours in it. It had cost me about $10,000 to mix it, because there was an initial mix made by some close friends of mine. We sent it away to be mixed, and they had mixed the record with a bunch of online virtual technology that failed just before the mastering was done, and they didn't know it. So they mastered the record, and the mix came out horrible. So I had to take it to Jamie Foles up at Sound Park and have him remix it and master it. So it cost me about 10 grand, plus all the other incidental. I had paid all the musicians involved. I already had about probably $20,000 in this record. This is all without having ever paid off another morning. So I said to Mickey, I don't think that's going to work. I think we should get control of this album and my catalog, and I'll just start my own label. I'll start my own independent label. And because also, see, Mickey worked with the major distributor for the East Coast, Tidemark. His office was they're all in the same office. And Tidemark was, the people that worked there were, my friends, people I knew, Shelley Nordstrom, Chip Sutherland, the lawyer. He was a lawyer for the whole outfit. And I don't know. I just looked at Mickey and said, man, we can't do this. We can't give this album. And Mickey said, well, let's just ask to get out of the contract. Because he knew what was going on. He was looking at it. He's like, well, they're not doing anything. They're not making any exorbitant amount of money because they're not doing anything. So that why are they going to fight you to keep you in the contract? They've already had 3 of your albums for however long. Let them keep it for the one more year or whatever it is, and they just give you the masters back. But me being me, I didn't want that. As far as I was concerned, they were holding my property hostage. And I was like, no, I got to get the masters back. I need to own all this stuff. We need to have it all under one roof, control of the whole catalog, so that I can feel good about what I'm doing. I don't want all of this. If they know I'm leaving, they know I don't want to give them the last album, whatever the case may be, they can screw me. They could do something to me inside the industry or make me totally unavailable in the industry. We just got to get out of the deal and walk away and start again, start our own thing. So I had Mickey call them and tell them we'd like to leave the contract. We're not gonna stay in this contract. And of course, Grit said, well, he owes us one more record. And Mickey said, no, we're not giving you this record. We just want out. It's not working for us. We want out. So today, a lot of people in that camp say, JP could have given us anything. Not now that the work is done. They could have made a tape of him farting and given it to us, and that would have been it. And the contract would have played out for whatever 1 or 2 more years, and we'd have given back the masters, and that would have been that. But you can't do that sort of thing, and that's why this video started off the way it did, right? Here's the situation that you're in. You're in a contract with people who control where your music's being sold, used, listened to, all these things. So if you were to send them a dud recording to just fulfill the contract, they would be angry enough about that to actually put it out, right? And then what do you have? Then you have a label that's trying to sell you a tape of you farting, or a tape, or whatever the case may be. If I were just thrown together a bunch of bullshit on a 2-track recording and send it up and said, "There's the album. Knock yourself out," right? You can't do it because they would, and anybody would have said, "Okay, fine, you bastard. We'll market it. We'll market this." Then you've got this terrible recording being pushed out all over the industry. It just can't be done. You're in a total catch-22. You can't give them a piece of crap to get out of the contract, and you can't get your records back from them that you already own. This is another thing that nobody thinks about. I own these albums. They didn't put a dime into Return to the Cape or Heart and Soul or Now That the Work Is Done. They had put some money into Another Morning, but I was still paying off a bank loan for that album. So I was trying to get back property that I already owned and paid for. Anyhow, it was about that time that I was wanting to go find Bigfoot. Anyhow, I said, no, boys, we're not doing that. We're just not doing it. We want out. That's it. So Grit said, well, okay, fine. We'll let you out, but we have to figure out how much we want to buy out of the contract. Buy out of the contract. Doesn't make any sense. I already own the masters. I have been not getting checks from these guys for sales, but yet they're talking about me buying my own masters back. Okay, fine. So I let them stew for however many days. They finally came back to me and they said, we'll let you out of the contract and give you all 3 masters back for $55,000. Now, according to the paperwork I saw, this $55,000 number was based upon their projected sales of all of my albums until the contract would end a couple of years after. If that was true, why hadn't anybody been paid for that much sales up until then on the existing contract? It didn't make any sense. They're saying that they're going to lose this much money if I leave the contract, but yet there's no evidence whatsoever by royalties paid to me or by reporting of sales to anybody that they had sold that much money worth of my records. It was just an arbitrary number based on bullshit. Really, if they could have said, they could have shown me, yeah, well, here's how much we've sold, so this is what you owe us. But instead they said, we're not showing you our books and you're not allowed to ever ask for them. If you buy out of this contract, that information's sealed. Like, holy shit, boys. Okay. So I went back to the bank again. And this time I put another mortgage on our house that we were building. Hadn't even built it yet. Hadn't even finished it yet. And went and borrowed $55,000 from the Royal Bank to give to Borealis Records so that I could have my masters back. So, and once again, right, I got to say this, right, because I've been saying it all along. Boys, you can't blame them. This is the way the business is allowed to run. They're not doing one thing that's out of ordinary or against the law or any of those things. This is the way the business is run. You're allowed to do this. Contracts, parts of record contracts are the same across every single company. And the provisions that protect the label are the same across every single company. And Jesus Christ, boys, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. Why anyone in their right mind would ever sign a record deal, unless you were Ashley McIsaac or Gordon Lightfoot or Natalie or anybody else that walked out of the CEO's office with $1 million check in their pocket, knowing that they were for sure going to sell $1 million worth of records and never have to pay that money back. That's when it makes sense to sign a record deal. But if you're not there, you are in trouble. And sometimes when you are there, you're in trouble. The label puts so much money in that they end up never paying you royalties because they don't have to. It's all recoupable. They charge you for every single toothpick that's used at a dinner and charge it back to your account so they never have to pay any money out for sales. It's just poison. Absolutely poison. But I went and got the loan. I wrote the check. I gave it. Mickey had a lawyer in Toronto. He took the check to them and collected all of the parts. In those days, that's what they called it, which was the film for all of the artwork and the DAT masters, and paid them the money and took my stuff and left. Unfortunately, though, one of the things we were never able to sort out was where the hell these records were being pressed. We knew they were at a company in Montreal called RSB, but that's all we knew. So, as far as I know, we never received anything from them. So even though I had bought all this stuff back and it was mine and the contract was deleted, the the masters that were used to actually duplicate these records were still sitting in a plant somewhere in Montreal. But the agreement was that they weren't to press anymore, and that's fine. But they also were like, we're not telling you how many we have, and we get to sell those and not pay you, and on it goes. Like, it was just, again, what are you going to do? That's the way the business works. So that was the end of my dealings with record labels. I never ever went near another one. They came to me several times, and no way. I was about to embark on some pretty incredible years where I started my own label and, finally started to make money from records. And yeah, it was a fascinating time. Yeah, amazing. But as I've said, I can't fault anybody for a lot of these things that have occurred to me, that have happened, bad things that have happened to me inside this industry, pale in comparison to some other stories that I've heard and seen, witnessed them. This business is what it is. And you go in, hopefully, with your eyes open and your ass clenched, and get out with your soul. And that's the main thing. So there we were, fresh and clean. Me and Mickey put the records in Tidemark. They started selling them. As far as I know, they did. And yeah, there was a few things that occurred with that situation that was really funny, that are more great examples of just how messed up this business is. But anyhow, as Max is still my close friend, Mickey Quays is also my friend to this day. Even though, we had our blow up at the end of our relationship as well. It didn't matter. A lot of the people, that's the great thing about a lot of the people that I came into contact with, that I ended up at odds with. Most of us are still good friends. And the reason being is that all these people, they gravitated towards me and I to them because we could both see that we both knew the industry and that we were working inside that arena. And a lot of things that go on in that arena aren't personal. They're business. And you say and do things in this business that suck, but they're not personal. They aren't. The same way I don't hold anybody at Borealis personally responsible for any of that happened. It was a business working inside the industry exactly the way it's allowed to. What we allow to happen in the industry is the problem, not the people taking advantage of it. You do what you're allowed. The same way as an artist pushes the envelope of his own art and music. If you're not allowed to say, fuck on the radio, then you write songs that insinuate it. You push the envelope as far as you can. Some of the most famous songs that ever have been were incredibly controversial for one reason or another. It's the same alchemy. It's artists playing the game, but playing it on their terms, as close to the edge of destruction as they possibly can. And sometimes it pays off. and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it pays someone else off.